Chapter 15. Madame Lavonne was often kept awake at night by shooting pains in her legs, and because she was awake, she insisted that the whole household stay awake with her. Further, she insisted that they listen again to the story of how she had dressed for the theater that night, and how she had walked into the building, walked on her own 2 legs, entirely and absolutely innocent of the fate that awaited her inside. She insisted that the gardener and the cook, the serving maids and the chambermaids pretend to be interested as she spoke again of how the magician had selected her from among the sea of hopefuls. "Who, then, will come before me and receive my magic? Those are his exact words," said Madame Lavonne. The assembled servants listened, or pretended to, as the noblewoman spoke of the elephant falling from nowhere, of how 1 minute the notion of an elephant was inconceivable, and the next the elephant was irrefutable fact in her lap. "Crippled," said Madame Lavonne in the conclusion, "crippled by an elephant that came through the roof." The servants knew these last words so well, so intimately, that they mouthed them along with her, whispering the phrases together as if they were participating in some odd, arcane religious ceremony. This, then, was what was taking place in the house of Madame Lavonne that evening when there was a knock at the door, and the butler appeared beside Hans Ickman to announce that there was a policeman waiting outside, and that this policeman absolutely insisted on speaking to Madame Lavonne. "At this hour," said Hans Ickman, but he followed the butler to the door, and there indeed stood a policeman, a short man with a ridiculously large mustache. The policeman stepped forward and bowed and said, "Good evening, I am Leo Matien. I serve with Her Majesty's police force. I am not, however, here on official business. I have come instead, at this most unusual personal request, for Madame Lavonne." "Madame Lavonne cannot be disturbed," said Hans Ickman. "The hour is late, and she is in pain." "Please," said a small voice. Hans Ickman saw then that there was a boy standing behind the policeman, and that he held a soldier's hat in his hand. "It is important," said the boy. The manservant looked into the boy's eyes and saw himself, young again and still capable of believing in miracles, standing on the bank of the river, and his brothers and the white dog suspended mid-air. "Please," said the boy. And suddenly it came to Hans Ickman the name of the little white dog, Rose. She was called Rose. And remembering it was like fitting a piece of a puzzle into place. He felt wonderful certainty. The impossible, he thought. The impossible is about to happen again. He looked past the policeman and the boy, and into the darkness beyond them. He saw something swirl through the air. A snowflake. And then another. And another. "Come in," said Hans Ickman. He swung the door open wide. "You must come inside now. The snow has begun." It had indeed begun to snow. It was snowing over the whole of the city of Baltese. The snow fell in the darkened alleys and on the newly repaired tiles of the opera house, and settled atop the turrets of the prison and on the roof of the apartments Polonaise. At the home of the Countess Quintet, the snow worked to outline the graceful curve of the handle on the elephant door, and at the cathedral it formed fanciful and slightly ridiculous caps for the heads of the gargoyles who crouched together, gazing down at the city in disgust and envy. The snow danced around the circles of the light that pulsed from the lamps lining the wide boulevards of the city of Baltese. The snow fell in a curtain of white all around the bleak and unprepossessing building that was the orphanage of the Sisters of Perpetual Light, as if it were working very hard to hide the place from view. The snow, at last, fell. And as it snowed, Bartok Wynn dreamed. He dreamed of carving. He dreamed of doing the work he knew and loved, coaxing figures from stone. Only, in his dream, he did not carve gargoyles, but humans. One was a boy wearing a hat, another a man with a mustache, and another a woman sitting with a man standing at attention behind her. And each time a new person appeared beneath his hand, Bartok Wynn was astonished and deeply moved. "You!" he said as he worked. "And you, and you, and you!" He smiled. And because it was a dream, the people he had fashioned from stone smiled back at him. As the snow fell, Sister Marie, who sat by the door at the orphanage of the Sisters of Perpetual Light, dreamed too. She dreamed that she was flying high over the world, her habit spread out on either side of her like dark wings. She was terribly pleased because she had always secretly, deep within her heart, believed that she could fly. And now, here she was, doing what she had long suspected she could do, and she could not deny that it was gratifying in the extreme. Sister Marie looked down at the world below her and saw millions and millions of stars and thought, I am not flying over the earth at all. Why, I am flying higher than that. I am flying over the very tops of the stars. I am looking down at the sky. And then she realized that no, it was the earth that she was flying over, and that she was looking not at stars, but at the creatures of the world, and that they were each beggars, dogs, orphans, kings, elephants, soldiers, emitting pulses of light. The whole of creation glowed. Sister Marie's heart grew large in her chest, and her heart, expanding in such a way, allowed her to fly higher and then higher still, but no matter how high she flew, she never lost sight of the glowing earth below her. "Oh," said Sister Marie out loud in her sleep, in her chair by the door. "How wonderful! Didn't I know it? I did, I knew it all along." Chapter 16. Hans Ickman pushed Madame Lavonne's wheelchair, and Leo Mathienne had hold of Peter's hand. The four of them moved quickly through the snowy streets, where they were heading to the home of the countess. "I do not understand," said Madame Lavonne. "I find this all highly irregular." "I believe the time has come," said Hans Ickman. The time for what?" said Madame Lavonne. "Do not speak to me in riddles." "The time for you to return to the prison." "But it is the middle of the night, and the prison is that way," said Madame Lavonne, flinging a heavily bejeweled hand behind her. "The prison is an entirely opposite direction." "There is something else that we must tend to first," said Leo Mathienne. "And what is that?" said Madame Lavonne. "We must retrieve the elephant from the home of the countess," said Peter, "and take her to the magician." "Retrieve the elephant?" said Madame Lavonne. "Retrieve the elephant? Take the elephant to the magician? Is he mad? Is the boy mad? Is the policeman mad? Has everything gone mad?" "Yes," said Hans Ickman, after a long moment. "I believe that is the case. Everyone has gone a little mad." "Oh," said Madame Lavonne. "Very well, I see." They were silent together then, the noblewoman and her servant, the policeman and the boy walking beside him. There was only the sound of the wheelchair moving through the snow and 3 pairs of footsteps striking the muffled cobblestones. It was Madame Lavonne who at last broke the silence. "Highly irregular," she said, "but quite interesting, very interesting indeed. Why, it seems as if anything could happen, anything at all." "Exactly," said Hans Ickman. In the prison, in his small cell, the magician paced back and forth. "And if they succeed," he said, "if they manage somehow to bring the elephant here, then there's no helping it. I must speak the words. I must try to cast the spell again. I must work to send her back." The magician paused in his pacing and looked up and out his window and was amazed to see snowflake after snowflake dancing through the air. "Oh, look," he said, even though he was alone. "It is snowing. How beautiful." The magician stood very still. He stared at the falling snow. And suddenly, he did not care at all that he would have to undo the greatest thing he had ever done. He had been so lonely, so desperately, hopelessly lonely for so long. He might very well spend the rest of his life in prison, alone. And he understood that what he wanted now was something much simpler, much more complicated than the magic he had performed. What he wanted was to turn to somebody and to take hold of their hand and look up with them and marvel at the snow falling from the sky. "This," he wanted to say to someone he loved and who loved him in return. "This." Peter and Leo Mathienne and Hans Ickman and Madame Lavonne stood outside the home of the Countess Quintet. They stared together at the massive, imposing elephant door. "Oh," said Peter. "We will knock," said Leo Mathienne. "That is where we will begin, with knocking." "Yes," said Hans Ickman. "We will knock." The 3 of them stepped forward and began to pound on the door. Time stopped. Peter had a terrible feeling that the whole of his life had been nothing but standing and knocking, asking to be let into some place that he was not even certain existed. His fingers were cold. His knuckles hurt. The snow fell harder and faster. "Perhaps this is a dream," said Madame Lavonne from her chair. "Perhaps the whole thing has been nothing but a dream." Peter remembered the door in the wheat field. He remembered holding Adele, and then he remembered the terrible, heartbroken look in the elephant's eyes. "Please!" he shouted. "Please, you must let us in!" "Please!" shouted Leo Mathieu. "Yes!" said Hans Ickman. "Please!" And from the other side of the door came the screech of the deadbolt being thrown, and then another and another. And slowly, as if it were reluctant to do so, the door began to open. A small, bent man appeared. He stepped outside and looked up at the falling snow and laughing. "Yes," you said. "You knocked?" "Yes," he said. "You knocked?" And then he laughed again. Bartok Wynn laughed even harder when Peter told him why they had come. "You want to take the elephant from here to the to the magician in the prison so that the magician may perform the magic to send the elephant home." He laughed so hard that he lost his balance and he had to sit down in the snow. "Whatever is so funny," said Madame Lavonne. "You must tell us so that we may laugh along with you." "You may laugh along with me," said Bartok Wynn, "only if you find it funny too. Think of me dead. Imagine if the countess were to wake tomorrow and find that her elephant had disappeared and that I, Bartok Wynn, was the one who allowed the beast to be spirited away." The little man was shaken by a hilarity so profound that his laughter disappeared altogether, and no sound at all came from his open mouth. "But what if you were not here either?" said Leo Mathieu. "What if you, too, were gone on the morrow?" "What is that?" said Bartok Wynn. "What did you say?" "I said," said Leo Mathieu, "what if you, like the elephant, were gone to a place you were meant after all to be?" Bartok Wynn stared up at Leo Mathieu and Hans Ickman and Peter and Madame Lavonne. They were all holding very still, waiting. He held still, too, and considered them, gathered together in the falling snow. And in the silence, he at last recognized them. They were the figures from his dream. In the ballroom of the Countess' quintet, when the elephant opened her eyes and saw the boy standing before her, she was not at all surprised. She thought simply, "You, yes, you, I knew you would come for me." Chapter 17. It was the snow that woke the dog. He lifted his head. He sniffed. Snow, yes, but there was another smell, the scent of something wild and large. Ido got to his feet. He stood at attention, his tail quivering. He barked, and then he barked again, louder. "Shh," said Tomas. But the dog would not be silenced. Something incredible was approaching. He knew it, absolutely, to be true. Something wonderful was going to happen, and he would be the one to announce it. He barked and barked and barked. He worked with the whole of his heart to deliver the message. Ido barked. Upstairs in the dorm room of the orphanage of the Sisters of Perpetual Light, Adele heard the dog barking. She got out of bed and walked to the window and looked out and saw the snow dancing and twirling and spinning in the light of the street lamp. "Snow," she said, "just like in the dream." She leaned her elbows on the windowsill and looked out at the whitening world. And then, through the curtain of falling snow, Adele saw the elephant. She was walking down the street. She was following a boy. There was a policeman and a man pushing a woman in a wheelchair and a small man who was bent sideways. And the beggar was there with them, and so was the black dog. "Oh," said Adele. She did not doubt her eyes. She did not wonder if she was dreaming. She simply turned from the window and ran in her bare feet down the dark stairway and into the great room, and from there into the hallway and past the sleeping Sister Marie. She threw wide the door of the orphanage. "Here!" she shouted. "Here I am!" The black dog came running toward her and through the snow. She danced circles around her, barking, barking, barking. It was as if he were saying, "Here you are at last. We have been waiting for you, and here you are, at last, here you are." "Yes," said Adele to the dog, "here I am." The draught from the open door woke Sister Marie. "The door is unlocked!" she shouted. "The door is always unlocked and forever unlocked. You must simply knock." When she was fully awake, Sister Marie saw that the door was, in fact, wide open, and that beyond the door, in the darkness, snow was falling. She got up from her chair and went to pull the door closed, and saw that there was an elephant in the street. "Preserve us," said Sister Marie, and then she saw Adele standing in the snow in her nightgown with no shoes on. "Adele!" Sister Marie shouted. "Adele!" But it was not Adele who turned to look at her. It was the boy with a hat in his hands. "Adele?" he said. He spoke the name as if it were a question and an answer both, and his face was alight with wonder. The whole of him, in fact, shone like one of the bright stars from Sister Marie's dreams. He picked her up because it was snowing, and it was cold, and her feet were bare, and because he had promised their mother long ago that he would always take care of her. "Adele?" he said. "Adele? Who are you?" "I am your brother." "My brother?" "Yes." She smiled at him, a sweet smile with disbelief that turned suddenly to belief and then to joy. "My brother," she said. "What is your name?" "Peter." "Peter," she said, and then again, "Peter, Peter. And you brought the elephant." "Yes," said Peter. "I brought her, or she brought me, but in any case, it is all the same, and just as the fortune-teller said." He laughed in turn. "Leo Matien," he shouted, "this is my sister." "I know," said Leo Matien. "I can see." "Who is it?" said Madame Lavonne. "Who is she?" "The boy's sister," said Hans Ickman. "I don't understand," said Madame Lavonne. "It's the impossible," said Hans Ickman. "The impossible has happened again." Sister Marie walked out through the open door of the orphanage of the Sister of Perpetual Light and into the snowy street. She stood next to Leo Matien. "It is, after all, a wonderful thing to dream of an elephant," she said to Leo, "and then to have a dream come true." "Yes," said Leo Matien. "Yes, it must be." Bartok Wynne, who stood beside the nun and the policeman, opened his mouth to laugh, and then found that he could not. "I must," he said. "I must." But he did not finish the sentence. The elephant, meanwhile, stood in the falling snow and waited. It was Adele who remembered her and said to her brother, "Surely the elephant must be cold. Where is she going? Where are you taking her?" "Home," said Peter. "We are taking her home." Chapter 18. Peter walked in front of the elephant. He carried Adele. Next to Peter walked Leo Matien. Behind the elephant was Madame Lavonne in her wheelchair, pushed by Hans Ickman, who was, in turn, followed by Bartok Wynne, and behind him was the beggar Thomas and Ido at his heels. At the very end, it was Sister Marie, who, for the first time in 50 years, was not at the door of the orphanage of the Sisters of Perpetual Light. Peter led them, and as he walked through the snowy streets, each lamp-post, each doorway, each tree, each gate, each brick leaped out at him and spoke to him. All the things of the world were things of wonder that whispered to him the same thing. Each object spoke the words of the fortune-teller and the hope of his heart that had turned out, after all, to be true. She lives, she lives, she lives. And she did live. Her breath was warm on his cheek. She weighed nothing. Peter could have happily carried her in his arms for all eternity. The cathedral clock tolled midnight. A few minutes after the last note, the magician heard the great outer door of the prison open and then close again. The sound of footsteps echoed down the corridor. The steps were accompanied by the jangle of keys. "Who comes now?" shouted the magician. "Announce yourself!" There was no answer, only footsteps and the light from a lantern, and then the policeman came into view. He stood in front of the magician's cell and held up the keys and said, "They await you outside." "Who?" said the magician. "Who awaits me?" His heart thumped in disbelief. "Everyone," said Leo Matien. "You succeeded? You brought the elephant here, and Madame Lavonne as well?" "Yes." "Merciful," said the magician. "Oh, merciful, and now it must be undone. Now I must try to undo it." "Yes, now it all rests upon you," said Leo. He inserted the key into the lock and turned it and pushed open the door of the magician's cell. "Come," said Leo Matien. "We are, all of us, waiting." There is as much magic in making things disappear as they are in making them appear. More, perhaps. The undoing is almost always more difficult than the doing. The magician knew this full well, and so he stepped outside into the cold and snowy night, free for the first time in months. He felt no joy. Instead, he was afraid. What if he tried and failed again? And then he saw the elephant, the magnificence of her, and the reality of her standing there in the snow. She was so improbable, so beautiful, so magical. But no matter, it would have to be done. He would have to try. "There," said Madame Lavonne to Adele, who was in the noblewoman's lap, wrapped up tight and warm. "There he is! That is the magician!" "He does not look like a bad man," said Adele. "He looks sad." "Yes, well, I am crippled," said Madame Lavonne. "And that, I assure you, goes somewhat beyond sadness." "Madam," said the magician. He turned away from the elephant and bowed to Madame Lavonne. "Yes," she said to him. "I intended lilies," said the magician. "Perhaps you do not understand," said Madame Lavonne. "Please," said Hans Ickman, "please, I beg you, speak from your hearts." "I intended lilies," continued the magician, "but in the clutches of a desperate desire to do something extraordinary, I called down a greater magic and inadvertently caused you a profound harm. I will now try to undo what I have done." "But will I walk again?" said Madame Lavonne. "I do not think so," said the magician, "but I beg you to forgive me. I hope that you will forgive me." She looked at him. "Truly, I did not intend to harm you," he said. "That was never my intention." Madame Lavonne sniffed. She looked away. "Please," said Peter, "the elephant. It is so cold, and she needs to go home, where it is warm. Can you not do your magic now?" "Very well," said the magician. He bowed again to Madame Lavonne. He turned to the elephant. "You must, all of you, step away. Step back. Step back." Peter put his hand on the elephant. He let it rest there for a moment. "I'm sorry," he said to her, "and I thank you for what you did. Thank you, and goodbye." And then he stepped away from her too. The magician walked, circling the elephant and muttering to himself. He thought about the star in view from his prison cell. He thought about the snow falling at last and how what he wanted more than anything is to show it to someone. He thought about Madame Lavonne's face looking up into his, questioning, hoping, and then he began to speak the words of the spell. He said the words backwards, and he said the spell backward too. He said it, all of it, under his breath, with the profound hope that it would well and truly work, and with the knowledge, too, that there was only so much, after all, that could be undone, even by magicians. He spoke the words. The snow stopped. The sky became suddenly, miraculously clear, and for a moment the stars, too many of them to count, shone bright. The planet Venus sat among them, glowing solemnly. It was Sister Marie who noticed. "Look there," she said. "Look up." She pointed at the sky. They all looked. Bartok Wynne, Tomas, Hans Ickman, Madame Lavonne, Leo Matienne, Adele, even Ido raised his head. Only Peter kept his eyes on the elephant and the magician who was walking around and around her, muttering the backwards words of the backwards spell that would send her home. And so Peter was the only one to see her leave. He was the only one to witness the greatest magic trick that the magician ever performed. The elephant was there, and then she was not. It was as simple as that. As soon as she was gone, the clouds returned, and the stars disappeared from view, and it began again to snow. It is incredible that the elephant, who had arrived in the city of Baltes with so much noise, left it in such a profound silence. When she at last disappeared, there was no noise at all, only the tick-tick-tick-tick of the falling snow. Ido put his nose up in the air and sniffed. He let out a low, questioning bark. "Yes," Tomas said to him. "Gone." "Ah, well," said Leo Matienne. Peter bent over and looked at the 4 circular footprints left in the snow. "She is truly gone. I hope she's home." When he raised his head, Adele was looking at him, her eyes round and astonished. He smiled at her. "Home," he said, and she smiled back at him, with that same smile, disbelief, then belief, and finally, joy. The magician sank to his knees and put his head in his shaking hands. "I am done with it then, all of it, and I am sorry. Truly I am." Leo Metienne took hold of the magician's arm and pulled him to his feet. "Are you going to put him back in prison?" said Adele. "I must," said Leo Metienne. And then Madame Lavonne spoke. She said, "No, no, it is pointless after all, is it not?" "What?" said Hans Ickman. "What did you say?" "I said that it is pointless to return him to prison. What has happened has happened. I release him. I will press no charges. I will sign any and all statements to that effect. Let him go. Let him go." Leo Metienne let go of the magician's arm, and the magician turned to Madame Lavonne and bowed. "Madam," he said. "Sir," she said back. They let him walk away. They watched his black coat retreating slowly into the swirling snow. They watched together until it disappeared entirely from view. And when he was gone, Madame Lavonne felt some great weight suddenly flap its wings and break free from her. She laughed out loud. She put her arms around Adele and hugged her tight. "This child is cold," she said. "We must go inside." "Yes," said Leo Metienne. "Let's go inside." And that, after all, is how it ended. Quietly. In a world muffled by a gentle, forgiving hand of snow.